Finally, she typed out her post. I'm a young woman who's been having an affair with a powerful pastor. It started with fear, but now I don't know what I feel. Someone is trying to help me expose him, but I'm confused. Should I, or should I just let things continue as they are? Her finger hovered over the post button. Before she finally clicked it, almost instantly, the comments began pouring in. One read, "Expose him, men like that don't deserve to get away with this." Another said, "You should tell your family and friends and make this public. You'll save other girls from him." But the majority of the responses were different. "You're lucky, enjoy it. While it lasts, he must really like you if he's taking care of you. What's the problem? It's not a bad thing. Don't ruin your blessings." Fan's heart raced as she read the comments. Fan's breath quickened. No, no, no," she whispered, shaking her head, as though that would banish the thoughts. She quickly scrolled past the post and slammed her phone face down on the bed, but her heart wouldn't stop racing. "Why can't I just forget?" she muttered to herself. Before she could sink deeper into her thoughts, a knock at the door startled her. "Ken," her mother's sharp voice called. Fen reluctantly got up and unlocked the door. Her mother, dressed in a vibrant anchor wrapper and matching headscarf, stood in the doorway. "Daddy Possibilities has sent for you," her mother said, arms akimbo. "He says there's an urgent prophecy concerning your future. He wants to see you at the church." Finn's heart sank. The mere mention of Daddy Possibility sent a wave of nausea through her. She glanced at her bed, hoping to use her discomfort as an excuse. "Mommy, I'm not feeling too well," she said, clutching her stomach for added effect. "I think I need to rest." Her mother's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean you're not feeling well when a man of God calls you? Don't give excuses. Do you want to block your blessings? Get dressed quickly. We're going." "But Mommy," Fan looked at her mother. "Should I just tell my mom the kind of man this pastor is?" Her gaze lingered on her mother, who stood waiting for her to get dressed. She imagined herself speaking up, saying, "Mommy, Daddy Possibilities isn't who you think he is. He's done terrible things to me." But as quickly as the thought came, a flood of doubts drowned it. "What if she doesn't believe me?" The fear twisted her stomach. Her mother revered Daddy Possibilities. He was a man of God, in her eyes incapable of wrongdoing. Fen fought back to his chilling words. "The first time, if you speak against me, he will bring a curse upon your family. Do you want your mother to suffer for your disobedience?" The memory made her chest tighten. What if he was right? What if her family truly became cursed? Because of her, she couldn't bear the thought of her mother, who had already sacrificed so much for her suffering. Because of her actions, silently, she vowed to keep the secret buried. Even as it slowly consumed her, resigned, she changed into a simple dress and followed her mother out of the house, her stomach churning with dread. The church was quiet when they arrived, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the compound. Daddy Possibilities' office, however, was well lit. Its frosted glass windows, glowing faintly foamy, hesitated as her mother led her to the door. "Go inside," her mother instructed her, tone leaving no room for argument. "I'll be waiting in the main hall. Don't keep the man of God waiting." Fen swallowed hard and stepped into the office. Daddy Possibilities was seated behind his desk, a smile on his face as he gestured for her to come closer. "My dear Fen," he said warmly, standing to greet her, "it's good to see you again. The Lord has placed something urgent in my spirit concerning you." Fiyin nodded, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She avoided his gaze, her discomfort growing with each passing second. "Come," he said, moving around the desk to stand beside her. "Let us pray together. The Lord's message is best received in the spirit of closeness." Fen stiffened as he placed a hand on her shoulder, the weight of it triggering a rush of memories she had tried so hard to bury. She wanted to run, to scream, but her feet felt rooted to the spot as Daddy Possibilities began to pray. His tone shifted from solemn to something more intimate. His hand slid down her arm, and the familiar sense of helplessness washed over her. "Oh," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but he ignored her protest, his actions growing bolder as he pulled her closer. Fen's body went rigid, her mind screaming for her to fight back, but the fear of what might happen as she resisted kept her frozen. When it was over, Fiyin stumbled out of the office, her legs shaky and her chest heavy with shame. Her mother met her at the entrance, oblivious to the turmoil in her daughter's eyes. "Did the man of God pray for you?" she asked eagerly. "Yes, Mommy," Fen replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Good, Leighton, go home." Fen followed her mother silently, the weight of the day pressing down on her like a dark cloud. Back in her room, That evening, Fen sat on her bed, staring at the blank wall in front of her. The events of the day replayed in her mind. Like a broken record, she wanted to cry, to scream, to tell someone what had happened. But who would believe her? Her mother thought daddy possibilities could do no wrong, and speaking out would only make things worse. Connell sat up in bed, drenched in sweat, his chest heaving as he struggled to steady his breath. The dream was so vivid it felt real. He could still see Deborah's tear streak face, her hands stretched toward him. As she cried out for help, her voice echoed in his mind. "Cole, please, help me, don't let it happen again." Beside him, Toei stirred, groaning. As she turned to face him, "Connell, what is it again? Why are you waking me up in the middle of the night?" "I saw Deborah," Connell said, his voice trembling. "She was crying, Toei, crying and begging me for help. I think something's not right. I can feel it in my spirit." Toei sat up and rubbed her eyes, sighing heavily. "Kuma, how many times will I tell you that you're overthinking? Deborah's death was tragic, yes, but you need to stop torturing yourself. These dreams you're having are because of the things you're imagining about daddy possibilities." "But what if it's not just my imagination?" Connell counted, his tone more relevant now. "What if God is trying to show me something? Deborah's death was so sudden," and he paused, his voice cracking, "and it doesn't sit right with me. Cole, please just pray and let it go." Toller said, lying back down. "You're always looking for something that isn't there." But Kuna couldn't let it go. Toei might dismiss his concerns, but the image of Deborah's face haunted him. He made up his mind to investigate discreetly without telling anyone. If there was even the slightest chance that something was wrong, he owed it to Deborah's memory to find out the truth. Mrs. Rachel sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the framed picture of Deborah on her bedside table. Her daughter's smile beamed brightly back at her, a cruel reminder of what had been lost. It had been months since Deborah's tragic death, but the pain still clawed at her chest. Every time she closed her eyes, the house of eternal possibilities was no longer a place of solace for her. It was a constant reminder of the promises daddy possibilities had made, promises of deliverance, breakthroughs, and blessings that never came. Instead, she had buried her only daughter, and her heart was burdened with the guilt of not protecting her. The guilt came in waves, each more unbearable than the last. Deborah had confided in her, once mentioning how uncomfortable she felt with daddy possibilities' attention. But Mrs. Rachel had dismissed it, thinking it was just youthful exaggeration. "The man of God sees something special in you, Deborah," she had said at the time. Now those words haunted her. Tears streamed down her face as she remembered the last midweek service she attended. Daddy possibilities had preached about obedience and submission, subtly chastising those who dared to question his authority. She had felt his eyes on her the entire time, as though daring her to speak out. But she couldn't. Her voice had been swallowed by fear, shame, and doubt. That night, sitting alone in her room, she made a decision. She wouldn't return to the house of eternal possibilities. The place that once brought her hope now suffocated her with grief and regret. The following Sunday, Cooney attended church with Teoda, going through the motions of the service, while his mind worked on a plan. As the congregation dispersed after the closing prayer, Cunley excused himself, telling Toller he needed to have a word with the pastor instead of going directly to Daddy Possibility's office. Kla lingered near the corridor leading to it. He found a quiet spot behind a pillar and waited, keeping an eye on the office door. 2 hours passed, and nothing unusual happened. Several people went in and out, mostly church workers discussing administrative matters. Cunley began to feel foolish. Maybe Toa was right, and he was letting his imagination run wild. Just as he was about to leave, he saw the office door open. His breath caught when he spotted Fen rushing out, her face pale and her movements hurried. She clutched her bag tightly to her chest, her eyes darting around nervously as she walked briskly toward the church exit. Clay's heart raced. Something about her demeanor set off alarm bells in his mind. He decided to follow her, keeping a safe distance so she wouldn't notice. Bean left the church compound and walked along the narrow path leading to the main road. She moved quickly, glancing over her shoulder every now and then as though she feared someone might be following her. When they were far enough from the church, Cunley quickened his pace and called out softly. Gunbian froze, her shoulders stiffening as she turned around. Her wide, frightened eyes met Koas Bian, Please don't be scared, Clay said gently, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. I just want to talk to you. I noticed you leaving the pastor's office, and you looked upset. Is everything okay? Fen hesitated, her mind racing. She didn't know who this man was or if she could trust him, but there was something about his concerned expression and soft tone that made her feel he might actually care. Still, she remained guarded. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, clutching her bag tighter. Fen, I don't mean to pry, Connor continued, his voice calm and reassuring. But if something is wrong, you don't have to go through it alone. I want to help you, please. Fiyin looked away, her throat tightening as tears threatened to fall. She wanted to believe him, to trust that he could be her way out of the nightmare she was living. But what if he didn't leave her? What if he was just like everyone else who blindly worshipped daddy possibilities? Seeing her hesitation, Kla reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. He extended it to her cautiously. He said, this is my number. You don't have to say anything now if you're not ready. But if you ever feel like talking, please call me anytime, day or night. Again, he blinked away tears and tried to smile. Fen took the card with trembling hands, her heart pounding. She nodded mutely and turned to walk away. Her steps, hurried and unsteady, cool, watched her go. His mind made up whatever was going on. He would get to the bottom of it, even if it meant confronting the man everyone called daddy possibilities. Back at home, Cole couldn't stop thinking about Fiyin. Her frightened expression and nervous demeanor confirmed his worst fears. There was more to daddy possibilities than met the eye. He felt a mix of anger and determination bubbling inside him. Toller noticed his distracted state during dinner and frowned. Clay, what's wrong with you? You've barely touched your food. It's nothing, Cole replied, forcing a smile, just tired from the service. Toei didn't press further, but Kuna knew he had to keep his investigation secret. If he told Toei, she would likely dismiss him again, or worse, confront the pastor prematurely. Meanwhile, Fen sat on her bed, staring at Cole's card. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, shame, and a flicker of hope. She wanted to cool him, but doubt crept in. Could she really trust him? What if he told someone else? As the days passed, Fan found herself replaying their brief encounter in her mind. There was something genuine about KL concern, something that made her believe he wasn't like the others. Kunnel and Tundi sat at a corner table in the small cafe, their faces tense with anticipation. They had spent weeks carefully planning how to expose daddy possibilities, and today was the day they would finalize the details with Fen. Fen walked in, her face calm but distant. As she made her way to the table, Clyde noticed something different about her. Her usual nervousness seemed to have vanished, replaced by an unsettling sense of composure. Lin, thank you for coming, Kla said, motioning for her to sit. She smiled faintly, taking her seat. You said it was urgent, she said. Clyde exchanged a quick glance with Tundi, then leaned forward. Yes, we've been working on a plan to expose daddy possibilities. Tund here is a private investigator, and he'll help us set everything up. We just need your cooperation. Bin tilted her head, a confused expression on her face. Expose him for what? Pai froze, his heart skipping a beat. What do you mean? You told me everything, Fen, about what he's been doing to you. We talked about this. Feng's face remained blank, her tone neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Tunda's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but he remained silent, observing the exchange. Fen, Colonel said, his voice trembling, you told me you trusted me. Are you saying now that none of that happened? Bean shrugged, avoiding his gaze. I must have been mistaken. Daddy possibilities is a man of God. He's done nothing wrong to me. Kula's chest tightened. Kula, please, he pleaded. If someone has threatened you, tell me. We can protect you. I haven't been threatened, Fen replied curtly. I don't know what you're talking about. Kula. Kunlun leaned back in his chair, stunned. He felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under him. This doesn't make sense, he muttered, running a hand over his face. Fen, why are you saying this now after everything you told me? Bian's expression remained unreadable. I think you should stop this, Clay. Whatever you're planning, it's wrong to go against a man of God. You'll only bring trouble to yourself. Tess stared at her, his mind racing. What had changed? Why was she suddenly denying everything to Mai, who had been silent until now, finally spoke for Yin? I don't know what's going on, but if you've changed your mind, it's okay to be honest about it. You're safe here. I'm being honest, Pan said firmly. There's nothing to change my mind. About I don't know what Clade is talking about. Coolness, frustration boiled over. Fen, stop this. You don't have to lie for him. He's manipulating you. Fen stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm not lying. I think it's best I leave now. Kla reached out to stop her, but Trend grabbed his arm. Let her go, Trend said quietly. Fen turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Kunnel staring after her in disbelief. Kla slumped back in his chair, his head in his hands. I don't understand, he muttered. She was ready to expose him. She trusted me. What happened? Thunder sigh, his face thoughtful. Something's not adding up. Either she's scared, or she's been manipulated in some way. Kun looked up at him, his eyes filled with despair. What do